Good morning. I'm here with Commissioner Garcia and Assistant Chief Larry Satterthwaite. Thank you so much for joining us and representing Chief Filler here and for everything you do, and Commissioner, for your leadership on this issue. I want to begin by stating an irrefutable fact. That is that alleviating our unacceptable and dangerous case backlog in the criminal courts is the most impactful thing we can do right now to reduce and to prevent crime in Harris County. Right now there are about 100,000 total criminal court cases. Around 40,000 of those are well past national case standards as far as how long they've been pending in our court system, including an increase of over 40% since 2017 when Hurricane Harvey struck. So this is a backlog that started back then and worsened during the pandemic as it did in jurisdictions across the country. But of course, we were already starting from a troublesome place because of Hurricane Harvey. The current court backlog is an emergency situation, and it requires an emergency response. Justice delayed is justice denied. Justice denied for the victims of crime, and justice denied for those accused of crime, some of whom are inevitably innocent. Several weeks ago, we announced a slew of initiatives designed to alleviate that backlog. So I want to go over what we've done already and then what we're announcing today. We approved $17 million to expand jury operations at NRG, hire additional associate judges, upgrade and support law enforcement, enforcement by upgrading body cams and other equipment to help evidence move through faster, because it's taking around 6 months for body cam evidence to make it to the court because of outdated technology. Prior to that, we also approved overtime for detectives for the Sheriff's Office violent crimes, adult crimes, and child abuse units to work cases in the most violent crimes with the constables through targeted investigations that focus on repeat offenders and known criminal activity in existing hotspots, improved information sharing, expedited investigations. We also approved a resolution asking for an additional criminal district court in Harris County, and that initiative passed the state legislature this past session. But more must be done. Of the 40,000 backlogged cases I mentioned, there's around 1,000 that are severely problematic cases. These are the oldest, most complicated, most backlogged, and most dangerous cases. We're talking around 3 years old. We're talking murders, rape, aggravated assault. Those are cases that are sitting in our dockets right now, and more must be done there. So we're proposing an emergency response docket in addition to everything else we've passed already at court in order to deal with the most severe of these already problematic and severe cases. Today, court will be considering an additional set of visiting judges in addition to the associate judges that we already approved, along with $2.5 million to build support staff and help get us through those most urgent of cases that require even more time and special attention. We'll hire 3 visiting district court judges and necessary support staff, office space, additional attorneys, and staff. Those investments will give judges the tools they need to help them get through the backlog writ large, those and the proposals that we already approved. The visiting judges in particular, which we're proposing today, function pretty much as full judges with almost all of the authority that district court judges have. And so they will help us get through those most complex cases. Now, there is a point I want to bring, and that is because of the system of checks and balances, the separation of powers. We can't control what the judicial branch does. What we can do is give them the tools. And so From backwards mapping, these are the tools that they'll be able to use to get through this backlog, and we're also working on tracking the progress so that if we're not getting there, we can be aware and pivot as necessary. I strongly urge members of Commissioners Court to approve this initiative today. It is an emergency initiative. It is to break a vicious cycle of crime and incarceration and make a meaningful dent in our crime rate. We need to invest in what works, not what's designed to score political points or to make splashy headlines. And the emergency response dockets, like the one hopefully we'll adopt today, is something that has worked successfully in other jurisdictions to get through the toughest cases. Building more prisons, using taxpayer dollars to support the mass incarceration of non-violent offenders, over-policing of Black and brown communities. Those are policies that are failed policies and are from back in the 1980s. Instead, this initiative will join a host of other actions in order to modernize our approach, have a smarter course to address the root causes of crime, including the current backlog, and invest in smart on crime and tough on crime initiatives. So I'll repeat my remarks briefly in Spanish, and then Commissioner Garcia will make his remarks. Primero quiero establecer un hecho irrefutable. El hecho es que el aliviar la acumulación inaceptable y peligrosa de casos criminales en nuestras cortes es lo más impactante que podemos hacer hoy día para reducir y prevenir el crimen en el condado Harris. Hoy día alrededor de 100,000 casos en nuestras cortes criminales, incluyendo 40,000 casos que están atrasados, que están por encima de los estándares nacionales. Es un incremento de 40% desde el huracán Harvey, y la situación empeoró aún más durante la pandemia. Eso sucedió alrededor del país, pero fue mucho peor aquí, por lo que ya había un retraso dado el huracán Harvey que inundó muchas de nuestras cortes. La situación en nuestras cortes ahora, ese retraso en los casos, es una situación de emergencia y requiere una respuesta urgente y de emergencia. La justicia retrasada es justicia denegada no solo para las víctimas, sino también para aquellos acusados de crimen, algunos de los cuales son inocentes. Hace varias semanas anunciamos una cantidad de iniciativas para atacar esta acumulación de casos en nuestras cortes. $17 millones para expandir las operaciones del jurado, para contratar jueces asociados adicionales, para modernizar los sistemas tecnológicos que apoyen a nuestra policía, para que puedan llevar la evidencia a la corte rápidamente. Hoy día tarda 6 meses y por eso se acumulan los casos. Antes de eso también habíamos aprobado horas extras para detectives en las unidades de crímenes violentos, delitos especiales de adultos, abuso infantil, para que nuestro alguacil y la policía pudieran trabajar en esos crímenes más violentos, en las áreas más violentas de nuestro condado. Pero hay que hacer más. De esos 40,000 casos que están acumulados, retrasados, hay alrededor de 1,000 casos extremadamente problemáticos. Son casos que llevan más de 3 años en las cortes. Son homicidios, violaciones, asaltos agravados, los más peligrosos. Entonces, hoy estamos proponiendo una iniciativa, una propuesta de emergencia, 3 jueces visitantes que son esencialmente, tienen básicamente la misma autoridad que los jueces distritales para poder manejar esos casos, y también el equipo adecuado para poderlos apoyar. Es una inversión de $2.5 millones y es una inversión que espero que mis colegas en la Corte de Comisionados aprueben. Hay algo que quiero dejar muy claro. No podemos controlar la rama judicial. Existe los controles y los equilibrios, ese principio constitucional de nuestro país. Entonces lo que podemos hacer es ofrecerle las herramientas necesarias para poder atacar este retraso, esta acumulación de los casos. Es lo que hemos hecho. Esta iniciativa de emergencia es algo, cortes de emergencia, es algo que ha funcionado en otras áreas alrededor del país, en situaciones como las nuestras. Entonces por eso estamos proponiendo eso hoy día. Lo que sí podemos hacer también es medir el progreso. Entonces vamos a estar pidiendo información de las Cortes para poder definir si estamos avanzando a nuestras metas de eliminar esa acumulación de casos. El construir más prisiones, utilizar los fondos de la comunidad para el encarcelamiento masivo de delincuentes no violentos, el encarcelar simplemente las comunidades latinas y afroamericanas, todas esas son políticas de los 80s. Hay que modernizar nuestra estrategia al crimen y al sistema penal. Es por eso que estoy priorizando estrategias inteligentes, no estrategias que simplemente sacan un buen título en un artículo de noticias. Debemos abordar las causas fundamentales de la violencia, y una causa fundamental es ese retraso en nuestras cortes, porque si no hay espacio para poder procesar estas personas acusadas de crimen, terminan en la comunidad. Necesitamos poderlas procesar, y si son inocentes dejarlos libres, y si no, enviarlos ya a una prisión. Entonces, por eso seguiremos trabajando en esto. Espero que mis colegas apoyen esta iniciativa, y ahora escucharemos al comisionado Garcia. Commissioner Garcia, thank you so much for your leadership on this.
Thank you, Judge. Likewise, thank you for your work and your leadership, Chief Satterwhite. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your work. And please convey our appreciation to Chief Finner and to the men and women of the Houston Police Department. Likewise, I want to thank Sheriff Gonzalez for his leadership and his work on this very important issue, and for the men and women of the Harris County Sheriff's Office, and to all Harris County deputies. I do want to take a point of personal privilege and just congratulate Jeff Bezos and Blue Origin on their successful mission. He's a hometown kid, so very happy for his success. To the matter at hand, the judge has laid it out well. There is a backlog in cases, and so let me just describe it in this particular manner. Commissioner's Court is taking action. We are providing the resources to support the respective system. The system is the men and women on the ground, the law enforcement officers who are risking themselves to go confront those dangerous situations that are taking place in the community. The investigators are a key part of that equation, to investigate the crimes that our patrolmen are responding to, reporting, and submitting to their office for follow-up. Those investigators then turn it over to the district attorney's office, who are then charged with ensuring probable cause, all the evidentiary factors, and then working to bring those to the courts so that there can be a trial and a person's guilt or innocence can be determined. The first part of that system is working. It's working well. The officers and deputies are making arrests. They're putting people in jail. They're putting dangerous people in jail. But as the judge has alluded to, the gap between prosecutorial presentation of those cases to the judicial system, it is growing massively. And so everything that we have understood and that has been brought to our attention, we are working at Commissioner's Court to address. We are putting smart money to address smart approaches on crime. And as I was sharing with Chief Satterwhite, this isn't our first rodeo. As a young cop in the 80s, we dealt with the oil bust. And then we dealt with it again later. And then we dealt with it again in 2009 when I first became sheriff. These things do challenge us. And so we have to be smart on our respective approaches and ensuring that we're putting the financial resources that we have available to very strategic and effective ways to deal with this particular issue. But let me also say that we need the judges to do their part. We want to make sure that they can defend decisions of putting repeat violent offenders on low bonds back on the street. That is one of the most frustrating and demoralizing issues that any law enforcement officer sees. They confront someone who has been a danger, who has caused harm, who has hurt one of our most vulnerable. They put them in jail, they make that report, they turn it over to the investigators turn it over to a district attorney's office. Then just to see that person walk out of the jail almost as fast as the officers finishing their paperwork. That cannot continue to be the case. We have to understand that, and so we're expecting the judges to be a part of an effective system as well. To that end, let me also say that this court has not been reluctant to take some stiff and strong measures. We have done it, and we're continuing to do it. We need to fortify the entire system. And to that end also, let me just say that the $14 million that we have put to use, as the judge alluded to, whether it was body cams, whether it was to a universal offense report, or whether it is to new technology that will be a force multiplier. Case in point, just yesterday, actually, early this morning, the shot spotter technology that we have deployed at Precinct 2 at my budget, through my budget, has resulted in the confiscation of 20 kilos of methamphetamine and 14 kilos of cocaine. This technology is working. Our investments are working. We are working to make Harris County safer. But once again, Chief Fenner has been loud and clear, and I think you'll hear that from Chief Satterwhite as well. The judicial process needs to handle the process that the investigators and law enforcement is bringing to them. We need to see those cases move. So bringing associate judges like we did previously, now bringing visiting judges, and making sure that we're making all judicial space available. Using courtrooms for criminal cases that were previously for civil cases. We are going to push the envelope at every turn that we have available to us to ensure that we're keeping citizens safe. Ahora más les quiero dar las gracias a la jueza Hidalgo por su trabajo, por su liderazgo en el aspecto de mantener la seguridad del condado Harris. También le quiero dar las gracias al jefe Satterwhite, que está aquí representando al jefe de policía de Houston, el jefe Troy Fenner, y también darle las gracias al alguacil Ed González y a su departamento del alguacil del condado de Harris. Estamos aquí solamente para explicar que las medidas que estamos tomando aquí en la Corte son medidas efectivas, son medidas fuertes, son medidas razonables, son medidas que llegan a hacer el sistema de justicia más fuerte y más completa y más efectiva, para asegurar que los elementos que están trabajando en patrullas, el trabajo que ellos están haciendo, respondiendo a casos, reportando esos casos y dándolos a los investigadores. Esos investigadores investigando los casos y ya cuando están listos, entregándoselos a la oficina del District Attorney, a la procuradora del condado. Entonces, de allí están trabajando para llevar esos casos, los más peligrosos, los más violentos, a los jueces. Y allí es donde estamos teniendo una dificultad. Entonces estamos invirtiendo y haciendo todo posible para asegurar que todo el sistema está trabajando. Pero también necesitamos que los jueces lleguen a ser parte del equipo, asegurando que no están dándole una fianza baja a personas que son violentos repetidamente, que están causando daño, están lastimando a los más vulnerables de nuestra comunidad. Los jueces también tienen que ser parte del sistema y tienen que ser parte del equipo. Y en ese aspecto les quiero recordar que esta Corte de Comisionados, la jueza Hidalgo, su servidor, el comisionado Rodney Ellis y los otros miembros de la Corte de Comisionados, estamos invirtiendo en justicia, estamos invirtiendo en seguridad, estamos haciendo inversiones inteligentes para asegurar que en todo lo que está pasando lo estamos escuchando, lo estamos entendiendo y estamos respondiendo. Y también para mostrar los resultados, la tecnología ShotSpotter que yo he implementado por mi presupuesto de mi oficina está teniendo buenos resultados. Hoy llegamos a recibir noticia que la tecnología nos ayudó a encontrar 14 kilos de metafetaminas. 20 kilos de metafetaminas y 14 kilos de cocaína. La tecnología sí está trabajando y vamos a seguir haciendo todo posible para asegurar que todo el sistema está completa y está trabajando para todos ustedes. Gracias.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Executive Assistant Chief Larry Satterwhite, and on behalf of Chief Troy Fenner, I want to thank Commissioner Garcia and Judge Hidalgo and all our partners for coming together, for being here to reduce this criminal case backlog that is plaguing our city and our county. You know, we're in a very difficult time, like Commissioner Garcia talked about in the 80s, where we're seeing a rise in crime, especially violent crime and our worst violent crimes. But I want you to know that HPD is committed to going out there every day and making a difference. Every day our officers, as well as our fellow law enforcement with the county and all in the state and everyone, we're all committed to going out there and making the public safer and getting the bad guy off the street and making those families feel more comfortable in their neighborhoods and wherever they may go and be. But the problem is the criminal court backlog, and it has allowed, sadly, a lot of people who should not be on the streets to still be out there. People who are preying upon the innocent, people who are doing some of the worst things, ones that would have already had their trial and possibly gotten help or gotten incarcerated or wherever they need to be so that they can go back out and do more crimes and hurt more people. So we have to do something about that, and I applaud you, Judge Hidalgo, Commissioner Garcia, and everyone for that. The emergency response docket that's being proposed now will hopefully add more judges, more trial cases, and hopefully get people off the streets that should not be there, and reduce the recidivism that we are seeing striking across our city and county. You know, a safer city and a safer county is the goal of all of us standing before you and all of the community. So we welcome the dialogue that we can have with our community leaders and our elected officials to do everything we can to allow those who have been victims of crime and those who have been charged with that crime to have their day in court. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take questions just briefly since we have to go back to Commissioner's Court.
Judge, can you talk about who these visiting judges are, where do you find them, and maybe what the difference is between them and the associate judges that you hired or hiring just a regular judge?
Yeah, so there's our regular judges are the district court judges, and that is where we created, through the legislature, everybody working together, an additional court so we can have an additional district court judge. Then there are the visiting judges. These are judges that have pretty much the same authority as a full district court judge, but they don't need to be permanent. And that's where we want to make sure grow the system unnecessarily, but grow to where we need it in order to tackle the current situation. So visiting judges are routinely used in these kinds of challenges. Emergency response dockets are an initiative that's been used in other jurisdictions so successfully, and these visiting judges will be able to actually hold trials, will be able to hear evidence, will be able to help get through these most violent cases. Then there are the associate judges. Associate judges are able to gather evidence, make lower level decisions. A lot of our full district court judges or visiting judges, sometimes their time, which is so important to get through this backlog, is taken up by routine matters that can be handled by an associate judge. And so that's why we have passed the funding for the associate judges at the last court, and those will take a little bit longer to get on board because the existing district court judges have to adopt rules as to how exactly to use the associate judges. The visiting judges, we should be able to have them here by the end of August. 3 visiting judges by the end of August. As far as where and how you find these folks, these are experienced judges, many times retired judges. And so we have relationships with folks that we hope will join us, and we've talked to the different parts of the system, and everybody's on board that with a goal hopefully by the end of August to get these 3 visiting judges tackling those absolutely, I mean, all of the backlogged cases are urgent, but there are some that are more urgent than others simply because they're more dangerous and they've been on longer.
¿Qué le dice a usted en español, a la gente que ya ve que el atraso está muy grande en esto, pero que esto no funciona si hay la puerta abierta que está con los jueces, que ya existe, que están dejando salir a criminales violentos y que están reincidiendo? Tuvimos el caso de una madre que perdió la vida y su hijo fue herido, de un niñito, y el señor tenía 7 crímenes pendientes. O sea, es una pena y una vergüenza que en el condado Harris haya jueces así, mucha gente lo dice. ¿Cómo va a ayudar esto a lo que está ocurriendo con lo que ustedes están haciendo?
Han habido casos, es muy trágico, cada víctima de personas, cualquier víctima pues es una tragedia, pero especialmente cuando es alguien que ya ha cometido un crimen, que ya está en el sistema. Entonces hay más crimen hoy día, tanto en el condado Harris como alrededor del país. Hay más crimen por la pandemia, por los impactos económicos de la pandemia, razones que tal vez todavía no entendemos. Es factible que al haber más crimen hayan más casos de recidivismos. Nunca el sistema va a ser 100% perfecto, siempre van a haber estas tragedias. Entonces lo que debemos hacer es enfocarnos en las soluciones que sabemos van a ser más efectivas. La solución más impactante para no solamente tratar de reducir esos casos tan trágicos, sino en general, esta epidemia de crimen es el mover las cortes. ¿Por qué? Porque cuando no hay espacio en las cortes, cuando hay que esperar tanto tiempo para resolver un caso, es ahí que personas acusadas de crimen no pueden ir enfrente de un jurado y decidir si son culpables o no. Es por eso, es esa la conexión. Entonces, esta no es una solución que va a existir de la noche a la mañana, es un tema difícil que está impactando a todo el país, pero tenemos que ser creativos y ser inteligentes en cuanto a nuestras soluciones, y esta solución va a ayudar a poder procesar a aquellos acusados de crimen para o ponerlo tras la cárcel o decidir, ok, son inocentes, salen a la comunidad.
Pues en términos de la legislatura señalaba hace un momento que se aprobó el tener una nueva corte criminal. ¿Cuándo estaría disponible esta corte criminal y de qué forma apoyaría todos esos casos?
Se ha establecido a través de la legislatura una nueva corte criminal. Esa corte tardaría mínimo, yo pienso, unos meses, si no más, porque es una elección adicional. Esos jueces son elegidos, son políticos, entonces es un proceso largo. Por eso ahora estamos trabajando con jueces visitantes, jueces asociados, que es más rápido y básicamente tienen una función similar sin permanentemente crecer el sistema.
Still in the middle of the pandemic, how can you guarantee the safety of the people that work in the county jail?
Yeah, that's part of the challenge, right? Part of what exacerbated the backlog, not just here, but throughout the country, was the pandemic, because you couldn't have the system moving as efficiently when there was the risk that somebody might get sick or die because of this. And that is where we go back to vaccinations. Folks who care not just about the health of the community, but also the health of our criminal justice system. That's another reason to get vaccinated, so that we can participate in our criminal justice system fully and safely. Right now we have provisions in place. For example, we do jury summons at NRG Park. Enormous social distancing, right? The jury trials have plexiglass. They have a virtual, trials have virtual and in-person versions, but it's less efficient. And so the faster we get through this pandemic, the sooner we do that, the faster we're going to get through this backlog, the sooner we're going to make our community safer. So just, numbers are going up in our community, hospitalizations and cases, and that's just another reminder for people to get their vaccines.
Puede decir en español ese pedacito de que los casos van arriba. En unos minutos están hablando el centro médico de Texas, los médicos están preocupados que vamos a volver a lo mismo, y ahora gente vacunada está siendo víctima de lo que está pasando.
Sí, estamos viendo un incremento en casos y en hospitalizaciones. Y eso es debido a tantas personas que todavía no se han vacunado. Eso también tiene que ver con nuestro sistema criminal, porque no podemos llevar las cortes a eficiencia máxima si sabemos que hay personas que pueden terminar hospitalizadas o perder su vida por este virus. Entonces, tanto por la salud de la comunidad como por la salud del sistema penal, la justicia a estas víctimas, les pido que se vacunen para poder salir de esta pandemia. Y sí estamos en una situación bastante preocupante aquí en el condado. Estamos observando los números y vamos a tomar cualquier decisión adicional en estos días. I was mentioning we have seen the increase in cases and hospitalizations. We are evaluating the numbers and we'll take additional steps if necessary in the coming days.
Judge, assuming this $2.5 million gets approved today, how long will that funding last for?
So the $2.5 million is for a 6-month visiting judge program and all the necessary staff. And again, if we're doing this, we're trying to be really evidence-based. We don't want to throw everything at the wall and then not see results. And so part of the conditions of this additional funding is that the judges and the courts provide us with the data to be able to assess whether this is actually making a difference. So we will evaluate in 6 months and we'll pivot accordingly.
Is there any telling how many cases they may be able to get through in that backlog in that 6-month window?
The hope is the current, we have an emergency response docket, sort of a pilot that's been running since January. They've gotten through about 200. So we have, 3 courts at 200 each. But remember, those are just the visiting judges. They have a smaller turnaround time because their cases are tougher. The associate judges will be able to get through, in theory, the larger backlog much, much faster. So what we've done is work backwards from 40,000 and figure out what should be enough tools for the judges to get through all of that. But we need to see the progress, and we need them to make use of these tools, to make sure they're there for full shifts, that they're working very efficiently, and that's what we're going to be measuring.
All right, we've got to wrap it up. Thank
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief.
Chief.
Thanks, Judge.
Thank you,
Judge,
Chief.
any